We're moving right along in the book of prayer, and we are at the 17th integral. 17 out of 17. And the author says the sequence, at-tartib, the order of the integrals. That's the 17th integral, keeping the order. This is the true 17th integral, the sequence, by consensus. Yani not having the intention to leave the prayer, not the intention to exit the prayer. That's not the 17th integral or something else. This one here, keeping the order by consensus. Yani, what's the consensus here? The consensus is that the sequence is an integral, not that it's number 17. The number here is not the consensus. It's the sequence itself. By consensus, except what is simultaneous. Simultaneous means at the same time. The integrals that are simultaneous, you don't keep a sequence between them because they're at the same time, which are intending while saying the takbir. Intending while saying the takbir. Then al-Fatiha, all three while standing. So the Fatiha is actually after the intending and after the takbir. But the Fatiha is during the standing, and also intending is while standing and takbir is while standing. So intending while standing, takbir while standing, and the intending while saying the takbir. But the Fatiha is after this intention and takbir, still while standing. And the tashahhud and the Prophet's prayers, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the salam while sitting. The tashahhud is before the Prophet's prayer, and the Prophet's prayer is before the salam, but all those are while sitting. This is because Al-Bukhari narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli." Pray as you have seen me pray. You is plural. And the Prophet's instructions, yani, and this is also because of the Prophet's instructions to the man who invalidated his prayer. To the man who invalidated his prayer. Yani, that's the name of the hadith. Hadithul Musi'i Salatahu, the hadith of the man who invalidated his prayer. What did he say to him? إِذَا قُمْتَ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَكَبِّرْ. If you stood to pray, make takbir. ثُمَّ قُرَأْ مَا تَيَسَّرَ مَعَكَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. Then recite what is easy for you of the Quran. So the way that's worded by itself, just this piece of the hadith, is broader than Fatiha. So if you want more complete comprehension of how to apply this portion of the hadith, you need to review the Fatiha section, which we're going to review inshaAllah ta'ala. ثُمَّ قُرَأْ مَا تَيَسَّرَ مَعَكَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. Then recite what is easy for you of the Quran. ثُمَّ ارْكَعْ حَتَّى تَطْمَئِنَّ رَاكِعًا. Then bow until you are tranquil. ثُمَّ ارْفَعْ حَتَّى تَعْتَدِلَ قَائِمًا. Then rise until you are standing straight. ثُمَّ اسْجُدْ حَتَّى تَطْمَئِنَّ سَاجِدًا. Then prostrate until you are tranquil. ثُمَّ ارْفَعْ حَتَّى تَطْمَئِنَّ جَالِسًا. Then sit up until you are tranquil or serene. ثُمَّ اسْجُدْ حَتَّى تَطْمَئِنَّ سَاجِدًا. Then prostrate until you are tranquil as a prostrator. The translation is yani, it's lacking slightly. Cannot carry all what the Arabic has. وَافْعَلْ ذَلِكَ فِي صَلَاتِكَ كُلِّهَا. Then do, meaning repeat that throughout all of your prayer. So there's the sequence, that obligatory sequence of the prayer. And if you want more details about the sequence of the prayer, then review which section? The section on sujudu sahu, sujood of forgetfulness. Intentionally shuffling the physical integrals absolutely invalidates the prayer by consensus. Physical integrals as opposed to the verbal ones. This invalidates the prayer for toying with the prayer. Or else, one immediately returns to what he forgot if he is not a follower. We covered that. There's no way he added something on purpose. Unless he already reached the same integral in the next cycle. Yes, so that should be clear. Yani, unless you're just coming now this week and you didn't catch the previous lessons. If so, he continues. Yani, if you reach the same integral in the next cycle, one continues and considers everything in between as canceled. And then he adds a rakat. So it's going to look like he's standing for fifth rakat. But really he's standing for the fourth rakat and there's something canceled in between his moves. Shuffling verbal integrals has a detail. The salam is like a physical integral, meaning you can't move that salam from its place. And anything else does not count ahead of its position. Yani, the salam is like a physical integral. Yani, you move that salam from its place and you put it somewhere, your prayer is invalidated. And anything else, any other verbal integral like Al-Fatiha, At-Tashahhud, or prayer for the Prophet, or prayer for the Prophet's family, does not count ahead of its position. If you put the Tashahhud ahead of its position, or the Salah on the Prophet ahead of its position, this will not invalidate the prayer. Can someone repeat Surah Al-Fatiha if they feel like they didn't have the proper khushu' while reciting it? All that I know, that it's not sunnah to repeat Al-Fatiha. So let the person, let the person at the moment he realizes his khushu' and his reverence for God while praying is lacking, then there, let him uh, increase it. Because anyway, something like this lack of khushu', it could happen in any part of the prayer. And having uh, khushu' in the prayer really is an exercise. If you have been exercising that khushu' in your prayer, then maybe now you are able to maintain that khushu' in your prayer more than you were able to a year ago or 5 years ago, for example. Because you have been working on yourself, praying every day, having the khushu' in your prayer, holding it, maintaining it. I remind myself, think about that khushu' like holding your breath underwater. How long can you hold it? So if you're a normal person, you might not be able to hold it too long before you got to take a breath. But then try again, hold it again. You keep practicing, you'll be able to hold it longer and longer and stronger and stronger. For prophetic recommendations to be recognized, the sunan, they must also come in their sequence in comparison to each other or in comparison to integrals. I think the way that we went through the integrals and the sunnahs in this document helped us to put the pieces of the prayer very well, yani make us see very well the pieces and sequences of the actions of prayer, or the parts of the prayer. For myself, at least, alhamdulillah, this has been very good review. So I hope that you've benefited too. And until now, it's as if I didn't find a chapter more beneficial than sujudu sahu for myself in this review. So the sunnahs, the sunnahs, the prophetic recommendations, for them to be recognized, they must also come in their sequence in comparison to each other and in comparison to integrals. So in comparison to each other. For example, you start by saying takbir. Then it's recommended for you to say the opening dua, wajjahtu wajhiya lilladhi, etc. And then to say a'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. So there's integral, then there's sunnah, this opening dua. Then there's another sunnah, which is seeking refuge. Then there's integral, which is al-Fatiha. Then there's sunnah, which is a surah after al-Fatiha, etc. So for the sunnahs to count, when we say for them to be recognized, means for them to even count, then they must come in their sequence, in their proper positions, in comparison to each other and in comparison to other integrals. Therefore, if one starts by seeking refuge, he misses the opening supplication, because the opening supplication is before seeking refuge. Nor should one pray for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam before the first tashahhud, before the first tashahhud, meaning you wouldn't say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad at-tahiyyat wal-mubarakat, but this will not invalidate your prayer. And likewise, if someone recited a surah before al-Fatiha, that one's clear for you. It's not going to count. So think about that like the other things too. Would you recite a surah before al-Fatiha? You probably say, no way, no. So that same firmness you have there, apply that to other things. Would you go back to the opening dua after you started saying A'udhu Billah? No way. So if one recites a surah before al-Fatiha, it's not counted. And likewise, if he supplicates before the last tashahhud, if he says a supplication before the last tashahhud, like Allahumma inni zalamtu nafsi zulman kabira, etc. This goes after the tashahhud. Wallahu a'lam. Now that's the end of the 17th integral of prayer. So we're done the integrals of prayer, but I want to go back and review. Maybe after we review fasting, we'll go back and start reviewing those integrals too. There's a lot of information, really. So I'm sure, Annie, I'm very confident you need a review before we just keep moving on. Any question?
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I had a discussion with a coworker today, a Muslim fellow, and he asked, like me, what school I followed as far as prayers go. And I told him the Shafi'i school. And he said, why did you pick Shafi? And I said, I didn't pick Shafi. I learned that way. He's like, but he said, you shouldn't be sticking to just one school. How do you address that kind of remark?
I would say to that person, if you knew, if you learned properly fiqh, then you'd never say that.
Mm. Okay.
And if he doesn't understand how, I would say to him, the more you mix up these schools, the more you're not going to find someone to answer your questions.
Right.
You're going to be mixing and mix and match, and then you're going to wind up in some case. If you just follow one madhab, you're going to always have questions. What if this happens? What if that happens?
Yeah, because he was saying that, he had heard that Shafi was harder than Hanafi and likewise. And I'm like, I don't know what you in context you're speaking to, but I said, what I've learned is the Shafi school. And I said, in certain cases, we know the judgments of the other schools, but I don't bounce around.
Yeah, not a good idea. Answers. So, uh, so you start mixing the madhabs, then you're going to be blending the clockworks. Not necessarily going to work right. Not a good idea. And also, I might say to him, don't you see that this is not what the scholars do? Don't you know that the Shafi'i scholars are Shafi'is, the Hanafi scholars are Hanafis? So the scholars themselves, they are following the Shafi'i school, Hanafi school, Maliki school, Hanbali school. They're not mixing these things up. So what I want to do is go back, look at all this. Probably 5% of all this information stuck with you based on experience. So we can go back to this chapter here, prayer integrals, and then we can read through them again, just as good review. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك